We're now going to hear about some of the data being collected and the tools being developed around the PTFI. And in our next conversation, we're going to look more closely at what the integration of all of this looks like, which I'm sure is a question that everyone has. So joining me, we have Naomi Fukugawa, the director at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Beltsville Human Nutrition Research Center, Bridget Holmes, a Nutrition and Food Systems Officer in the Food and Nutrition Division at the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, Holly Peckott, the Program Director of Data Solutions at the American Heart Association, Michael Katutwa Johnson of the Hopi Tribe of Arizona and University of Arizona, and J. Bruce German, a distinguished professor and chemist emeritus at UC Davis and chair of the PTFI Scientific Advisory Committee. Please give them a round of applause. Give everyone a moment to get settled here. How's everyone doing? Everyone doing okay? Yeah, good. Woo, I'm glad. Okay, so thank you all for being here. This is a big panel. I kind of like it. Bruce, before we dive into what the integration, it's so nice to see you, by the way, into what the integration of data looks like, I'm hoping you can paint sort of a big picture for the audience. What will successful integration allow us to accomplish?
Yes, that's a bold question. Actually, everyone in this room can go home confident that you are the boldest people in the world. You'll never ask the question, when someone says, you can't do that, you're going to say, yeah, we can. This is a really ambitious project. I just want to give you a quick example of why this is going to change the way we think about food and what it does. And it comes from research that we've been doing at UC Davis for many years, using exactly this approach of looking at molecules comprehensively. But we've been using an unusual food, admittedly, which shouldn't be unusual, but nonetheless, scientifically it is, human breast milk. This remarkable product of late evolution where mammalian mothers literally dissolve themselves to make a complete and comprehensive diet for their infants. So it's a wonderful example of nourishment in a comprehensive sense and sustainability. Everything costs a mother. So we began to take human breast milk apart in this PTFI style, taking all those complex molecules apart. Imagine our surprise to discover that human breast milk is chock-a-block full of undigestible matter. That makes no sense.
Sure.
Why would mothers dissolve themselves to make poop in their baby? So first, analyze them all. There's a remarkably specific group of dozens of small molecules of basically fiber, little bits of fiber. We now have analytical capabilities to measure all of those oligosaccharides, small molecules, going into a baby and coming out of a baby. So if they're not feeding the baby, what are they doing? So one of the ideas was, well, they're feeding not the baby, they're feeding bacteria. Turns out we tested all sorts of bacteria. No, they don't feed bacteria. If they did, that would be bad for the baby. But in fact, from a library that a very forward-seeing institution had established of bacteria from humans, we found a bacterium, a single bacterium, Bifidobacteriolongum subspecies infantis, from a library from a breastfed baby. What an idea. Sequence the entire genome of that bacterium, and it's fully capable of digesting and absorbing all of the sugars in human breast milk oligosaccharides. What was important was how the scientific community responded to that information. The scientific community went out and said, well, we just analyzed babies. They don't have bifidobacteria. You're wrong. And we, as scientists, should have said, okay, you're right. We're wrong. We didn't. We knew we were right. But to our horror, we realized that this bacteria was no longer in babies. We'd found something that wasn't there, but it should be. Can you put it back? Yes, you can. So what we realize is the foods that we eat feed us and they nourish bacteria. We need to know exactly what bacteria and what those carbohydrates are. Qiming taught you already the detail you need to know, every sugar, every linkage, because if you feed the wrong bacteria in you, they grow. They produce endotoxin. They will make you inflamed all day, every day. How do we describe that complexity today? Fiber. Really? We got one word for the most complex biopolymer system there is? Absolutely not. What we can do now, the young people can be inspired to completely change the way we analyze food. And because of that complexity, literally understand not just what food is, what food does. So I am so excited to be part of this. Honored.
You are. I can't tell.
Ismahan already said it. Biology is complicated. It doesn't mean you can't understand it. With this little example, we can understand how biology works. We need to. If we take what we've learned of babies, what we need to be able to do is measure all the complex carbohydrates that people eat in order to give them the right ones. And our first reaction was, oh my gosh, if adults need to eat food that complicated and very specific for the right bacteria, we're going to have to expand agriculture by another 20% just to get those carbohydrates. We analyze them using the tools of PTFI. Guess what? Alejandra, you're right. We throw them away. There's more of that complex carbohydrate than the world needs in what we throw away today.
Yeah.
So everything we need is in hand.
Thank you. Thank you for the storytelling, Bruce. And a round of applause for Bruce, please. Holly, I'm hoping you can dig a little bit deeper into how the American Heart Association will sort of incorporate the PTFI into its platform so that it can be used by your researchers and everyone who's involved with the association.
Yeah, we're really excited to bring the precision medicine platform as part of the tools integration here for PTFI. So the precision medicine platform is a cloud-based computing platform. It comes pre-installed with analytic tools like R, Python, SAS, and it can be customized based on the researcher's need. We give a researcher a workspace and a data set. This in particular, they'll get access to the first 500 foods, which we'll keep updating over time. And you can really choose your own adventure from there on how you want to dig deeper into the data. It was really great to see the updates from Qiming and the team at Verso. And Marker Lab, I feel like, could be a really good first step for someone who wants to look into, okay, what are the different foods that are in this data set? What can I learn about there? And then how could I then take a deeper dive by using a workspace on the PMP to do further analysis. And also you can bring additional data sets, maybe link or merge data based on climate and other things with the data set that is going to be in the workspace for that researcher.
So exciting, right? I mean, I could tell you when we had our prep call, you were excited about it. It has so much opportunity for a lot of different folks working in the health sector.
Right, right. And Selena mentioned earlier that we're launching the Data Exploration Challenge. So there was a QR code on your document today that you all got. So please scan that and visit our website to learn all about the details for signing up. And there's a very nice cash prize if you are the winning project. So that's a little incentive there. But some of the questions that we have as prompts for that data challenge are identify the foods that provide the greatest diversity and quantity of specific food components that are associated with decreased risk of disease, such as heart disease, dementia, cancer, etc. Explore the associations between specific food components and risk factors, including but not limited to sleep and blood pressure. Explore the emerging trends in functional medicine and precision nutrition, and identify the foods that individuals might include in their diet to replace a dependency on supplements. And additionally, identify factors and metadata that impact diversity and quantity of food components. And you can ask any question of the data that you think might be really interesting and you want to know the answer to. So we're really excited to launch that, and please contact our team, and there's information on that webpage if you have any questions about participating.
And cash prize, everyone, cash prize. Thank you so much for all of that. Bridget, I can only imagine what FAO wants to do with all of this incredible data. It must be like so exciting. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks ever so much. And yeah, let me just congratulate the team behind the PTFI, because it's really an incredible amount of work that they've done.
Absolutely.
For us working in nutrition at FAO, it's been a welcome spotlight that's been shone on food composition data. And this type of data is the fundamental of many of our activities in nutrition. So for us, it's really a fantastic opportunity. So when we think about trying to understand what people are eating and drinking in different countries, we need to obviously, first of all, ask them to record what they've consumed, but then we need to link it to this data, this food composition data. And that is a hugely time-consuming process, and we need country-relevant, detailed information. So it's fantastic that we're going to have now this access to such information. And just to give you a couple of figures, at the moment in the world, we have almost half of countries don't have any national food composition database. So this is a huge gap in our knowledge about knowing what people are eating and drinking. And around 60 composition tables that we have at the moment are based on data more than 10 years old. And of course, this data is data that we need to keep updating. It can't be static because of the changes in the environment, in the food system, how the food is processed. So I really hope that there will also be kind of a long-term plan to keep this data being updated, refreshed, etc. And that said, at FAO, we do support countries in collecting and compiling this data ourselves, but we recognize that there are huge gaps and really see the PTFI as an opportunity to fill some of those gaps.
Again, it's democratization of data in a way that we kind of haven't seen before, right? Absolutely. Thank you so much. Naomi, along the same lines that I asked Bridget, on the USDA side, how do you see the data from the PTFI being used alongside other data sets? Is that possible with what USDA is doing?
I love the enthusiasm we have here, but do have to qualify that I am a federal employee, but my comments today are mine, personally.
Thanks, Naomi.
And I will also disclose that I couldn't win the cash prize or accept it. So it might be a good investment. But aside from that, I do think the data that is going to be available in PTFI will certainly enhance our USDA Food Data Central. And I certainly believe and support collaboration and partnerships to help increase not only the usage but the quality of data.
Yeah.
And I think in our discussions we talked about the fact that quality data is very important in today's age of the use of AI and machine learning and development of algorithms. And those are extremely dependent on the quality of the data that the computer is allowed to search and do, as well as the need for taking it full circle. Really, it's the human or the consumer that I think we oftentimes include at the last minute.
Right.
And when Steve showed and Jessica showed all of those Manhattan plots, one could say those Manhattan plots that are common in certain foods, maybe we should go back to the people to find out whether or not they had used those specific foods for specific outcomes, and therefore it can spawn new research That would be clinical research, which would be proof of principle as to how a component may be valuable for, the future and for wellness.
Absolutely. What a great idea to put eaters first in all of this. I mean, a lot of, research is done that, the end user doesn't have any input. And true democratization, allows everyone to be involved, right?
I think so. So welcome that.
Yeah, me
and
too.
welcome partnerships from, the rest of the world, even though we have the U.S.
Sure.
do a DA.
But that collaboration, as you mentioned, leads to the quality that's needed. If you're not all working together, you can't have that quality data.
And we also don't want to continue to have silos in data. We want it linkable, accessible, and essentially free.
Absolutely.
And with respect to food, I think what's really important is that for the people, we need food that is of high quality, but it's also affordable, accessible, and acceptable in terms of taste and flavors.
Sure.
Because the only way you get people to eat specific foods is by adhering to what their cultural preferences are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, Michael, if I can turn to you, we heard a little bit from Maya earlier about, sort of the protections in place for data, and I'm wondering if you can talk about tribal data sovereignty and really what's needed to make sure that indigenous folks aren't taken advantage of when we're talking about data collection like this.
Well, here at PTFI, we have an agreement that I'm working with here, and that's to make sure that the data that is devolved is first of all put in a closed access database, because with every new discovery becomes a venture for some, right? I mean, whatever discovered out there, some people say this is benefit for everybody, we need to take this, but those benefits often don't reach the indigenous populations at all. If you look, for example, if you look at maize, for example, maize is a $3 billion industry, but those people who produce maize on mass quantities, where does that monetary value go to? It never reaches back to the originals, people who domesticated those crops for 10,000 years. It never reaches to help those communities. There's no outreach involved in that. It's just a take, and never a give. And so that's what concerns me the most. But I think, with tribal data sovereignty, we have a consultation process here in the United States of America. Most of them are done through this institutional review boards to get this into place. And so my key thing is that food is so important. But it's the real lack of data here in the United States that we have for indigenous populations.
Yeah.
For example, there's a new natural nature assessment that's coming out that could show the biodiversity of Indian country in general, but yet we have not been invited to the table. We only sit on 2% of the land now, but we make up 5.4% of key biodiversity areas in the whole entire United States. And that tells you something. That means that we're managing our land properly. One of the main things that I was really impressed by, we just did a tribal adaptation plan assessment with the tribes here in the United States. And their thing was not, looking at the different variables that we composed of, like water, soil, and things like that. It was to prepare for things that are coming. It was the constant stage of adapting. But here in the Western view, we're just more concerned about stopping it. We're not looking at the whole adaptation principles and how we adapt from one thing to the other. And so a lot of my work does that. A lot of my work finds ways to adapt. But with food, it's a data that I'm trying to come out to show what's good for us to eat. I mean, the stuff that USDA has provided, not to hit them too hard in the past in Indian country, has got us obese, high rates of diabetes, high rates of sugar, and all that stuff. We need to look at what's in our foods, like our blue corn and our other beans and stuff. What is in those that make us healthy? Find resources to upscale those, to give them back to our communities, so we're able to eat things that were place-based in the first place. Right? Bread was not place-based in Indian country. White bread was not place-based in Indian country. It came on big trucks. Right? And so let's do something here to put the resources back into these native communities in the United States and throughout the globe in general, to make sure that we're eating products that were designed for us. And when I mean place-based, that means, yes, we've had corn for over 10,000 years, but it's quality, it's nutrient-dense corn. And that makes a big difference in our dietary life. That helps us cut down on some of those things that we don't want to have. And so every single one of these crops that we raise in the United States that is indigenous, I would call specialty crops. But we don't receive subsidization on that, which is unfortunate. We don't get to do that because we're not at the scale that the 2,000-acre farm. We're subsistent farmers, just like I am. I have a 5-acre field, but if you put 20 of us Hopi farmers together, we'll be upscaling, right? So you kind of look at the positive of both things. But for me, it's just trying to understand people and have people understand the real issues when it comes to data. Data is a good thing to have, but it's only used, in my way, if it's benefiting the community and not benefiting the corporations. We have to look at it that way. We have to be solid, and we have to be realistic with that. And I'll end it there. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you so much. Naomi, I know you have some comments.
So I'm excited to sit next to you, Robert, because we are very excited about increasing the number of indigenous foods in USDA Food Data Central. And I'm not sure if you're aware of the fact that we're also part of working with the school lunch program, which is another arm of USDA, to begin to include indigenous foods. And this is where partnership can occur. And even though, yes, you may have thought that the past, I always would like us to look forward, because there's so much that we could do together to move all of us together in the right direction for the wellness of the population and Mother Earth. And so this is just the beginning, and it's a perfect launch that PTFI is doing for us and inviting us to be here together. Thank you.
Thank you.
This could be for all of you, but Michael and Naomi, are we bringing up access and affordability of foods enough when we're talking about the PTFI? And I ask that as a question. Do we need to be sort of including that in these conversations more?
Yeah, I believe so. I think the thing to access, I think, is probably one of the most important things. And also affordability, because, you know, there's no Trader Joe's or anything like that on Indian reservations because we don't have the bodies. You know, it's a business, right? If we're going to make it a business, we should make it an equitable business more so than just a one-sided business. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
So I do think, if I may,
please,
that it's very important that we talk about biodiversity, but there's also diversity in us and people. And we must always respect cultural, culturally relevant foods, and that it's not really one size fits all.
Right.
And so therefore, in terms of what recommendations are, what foods are available, we should not have populations feel guilty because they weren't able to adhere to a set of guidelines that might have been developed based on other data, but really to try to put it into the context of what they have available, what's affordable, and what's accessible for their community. And it's the mixed plate that will give you everything that you need. So,
thank you for that. I do want to shift gears a little, and we've already talked about this, I think, over these last 2 days, but the integration of data is just not an easy task. And we're making, I don't think we're making it seem like it's easy here, but I know so much work has gone into it. But can we talk a little bit more about the challenges and barriers that come up with that? Do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, you're asking me because I have a unique perspective. My first phone call was on an analog phone that literally I wound to ring. It was on a wire that someone had to physically connect to allow communication. Think of where we've come. Our phones communicate. I can text anyone in the world immediately. Digitization of communication has transformed the human condition. Food is not yet in that world. Why? We simply don't know what food is. This will have an astonishingly disruptive effect because we can finally join the 21st century and start building the databases and relationships. We will build the databases, and if only mathematics had developed a way to recognize pattern in high-quality data. AI. The mathematicians beat us to it. We now have to build the databases that will allow us to understand pattern. That's why we are suffering the diseases we are. It's not a single nutrient deficiency. It's a pattern of diet that gives rise to inflammation, into diabetes, into obesity. All of the problems are complicated. We are building the means to change that. I love the way Barbara Burlingame says it. We are building the dictionary that the next generation will use to write the stories of the human condition, their stories. We are enabling things that in this room we will not even imagine will be possible and will come very fast. You saw Stephen Cheeming and Jennifer showing data, real time. It's coming very fast. Let your imagination run.
Such good advice. Anyone? Yes, please. Does anyone else want to talk about the integration of data and some of the challenges there? I mean, Bruce said it so eloquently, but I think there are other sort of obstacles that you might want to identify. Any thoughts?
Well, you know, Bruce, I'll always have something to say. But I would like to bring it back to the fact that we can have all of that data and we could use it and unleash AI to it, but we always have to come back to the integrative physiology and metabolism and what is happening in the complex human body if we're talking about feeding the human. Sure. I, say that one of the challenges that PTFI may have is really extending it to, the healthcare world, the consumer, and, the other groups. Oops, you're ready to, oh, sorry. And the other groups that should benefit from all the knowledge that we have, but that the information may not have gotten to them at this point in time. And we can't do it after the fact, but we should be doing it proactively.
Right now, for sure. I wonder if all, this is for all of you, if you can talk about what you're most excited about as access to this data becomes wider and sort of more efficient, easier to get to. Anyone want to jump in on that? Sure.
I just think seeing all the ideas and projects that, maybe initially come out of the data exploration challenge, but then continuing on as the data set grows, like just all the people that will use Marker Lab or get a workspace on the precision medicine platform and really dive in and see what comes out of that. I think that's really what excites me.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, I'm excited about the potential that this brings in terms of capacities. So also in terms of the equipment for doing the analysis and the fact that we're training people, PTFI are training people on how to do this analysis. And that's one of the big constraints that we have in food composition work, is that there's a real lack of resources. So for me, that's really exciting, and bringing that back to the country level, and to make sure that those resources are long-term again. So yeah, that's something that I also just wanted to say, that the Good Food Fellows, I think, is a great initiative. We had 2 of them join our food composition training that was done by FAO and the National Institute of Nutrition in India in February of this year, and really, really pleased to see that these are, definitely building capacities and a big move for us.
Yeah, that infrastructure question is so interesting to me personally. Michael.
Yeah, I'm just really excited that we're gonna, this allows us to really focus on the quality of the things we're eating. I think more so than ever. And I think, and by doing this, we'll have a lot more studies to show, not only the quality of foods, but some of the negativity of just the 6 or 7 major crops that we continually focus on and feed the world, right? So, by having the quality thing, we're also helping the small farmer out there, too, if we can still talk about that, to help them bring in there and make more co-ops are utilized, so that we're able to have more people involved in our agricultural process here in the United States.
Thanks for bringing up farmers. Always needed in these conversations.
Well, I'm a 250th generation farmer, like I said, so I got to, right?
Thank you so much. I want to thank our panelists. This has been a really fun panel. I appreciate you all. Please give them a round of applause.